the word game as a metaphor for politics, for our personal lives, for relationships. We're always invoking games because what games really are rituals for taking some experience, putting a circle around it, and repeating it in some way, in a way that makes you self-conscious about it. So, and we find that that's fun because we like to be synchronized with one another. It's just fun, you know, to all clap hands together if you're 5 years old and all fall down together. We just like doing that. And so, but there's a lot of things that we keep score about, for instance, or that we think of as navigating a labyrinth or a maze. It's a lot of ways in which we see the world as games. And I think that games are a very rich framework for understanding a lot of human interaction. And then once we learn to synchronize our behavior, we invent symbolic forms of representation, and we can start telling each other stories. So games and stories have made the human brain in some way and have formed the basic layers of culture. And now we have, for the first time, a medium that is procedural, where we can describe the world as behaviors. So we can instantiate game worlds and worlds with, and we can tell stories by making worlds with behavior. I personally am interested in narrative because I feel that it expands what we can understand about the world. That is one of our oldest cognitive abilities, one of the oldest cultural building blocks is the ability to put things into story form. And when we get more powerful media that can hold more and express more, then we can tell more complicated stories. So we went from an oral culture to a written culture. We could tell more complicated stories because we could assume that people remembered the beginning when they got to the middle and the end. In my own mind, I often think when I was admitted to graduate school, I was admitted on the East Coast and the West Coast. So every time I go to the West Coast, I have this sense of this virtual reality in which I went there instead of to the East Coast, and what my alter ego would be doing now if I had taken that path. And I think we certainly have that when we look at our friends and we give them advice and we can see very clearly how they should have done this instead of that, and our parents, very clear how if we had a different set, things would have gone differently. So more and more we think about life as taking place in this possibility space. And so it's wonderful that we have a medium for expressing that sense of possibility and getting better control over our thoughts about different possibilities. Now that we have a medium that you can navigate in multiple directions and that you can parameterize because it's procedural, you can tell much more complicated stories. You can tell stories with multiple sequences that are all coherent but different ways of looking at the same thing. And then you can tell parameterized stories about what would happen if things went this way or if they went that way, and how do we compare that. So those things are educational and cognitive. They enhance our ability to understand the world. Well, I think that it is just a privilege to be living at a time when a new medium of representation comes into human hands. It's just not that often that we invent something that is a whole new way of structuring the world. So I think that it's a great privilege to be at Georgia Tech, to be playing with it, is look at the peak of the world's resources intellectually and in terms of the time that we can give to thinking about these things. So it's a tremendous creative opportunity.